This is one of those projects I wasn't originally going to do a video on, but after 3 years the algorithm has decided that my old rope tow video is something people might actually want to see, and since I'm rehabbing it anyway, I figured I'd do an update. We didn't get a whole lot of snow last year, so we didn't end up running the rope tow at all. And since we weren't using it, some small woodland creature decided it would, built its house in it. It also decided that the gas tank apparently was pretty tasty. This thing was all full of ice. The spark plug wire doesn't look like anything chewed on it, but it's definitely got a big cut in the insulation. That's all built into the ignition coil. And like any motor that's been sitting for a while, the carburetor's pretty crusty. We're finally getting enough snow this year that it's probably worth firing it up. Luckily, you can buy cheap, low-quality parts for these things on Amazon, so let's slap this together and see if we can go skiing. I probably ought to start on the carburetor, and I probably ought to clean that better, but I'm not going to. Really, the only issue I found on this when I took it apart was the float needle wasn't moving properly. So I got a little kit that has the new parts, and in trying to clean that out, I found out that the needle seat on this is actually a separate piece, and kind of blew it off into the oblivion of my shop. I'm just going to use the back side of a drill bit to push it down in there. New needle. I was missing this little spring, so when the float moved down, it wasn't opening. Also don't know what order this goes together now. Sometimes having a tiny little anvil is pretty helpful. This might not be one of those times. This... Cool, that float needle doesn't go in enough. Is that the wrong float needle? Or is my seat not in enough? Alright, I got that seat seated enough, and now that needle will go in the whole way. So I'm going to go in from this side. The hook part obviously snaps around the needle. Just don't know if it goes in this way. That seems close to right. Well, we'll hope that's good enough. I'll leave that gasket on because that one's fine. Yep, that should be fine too. Except that one's the wrong size. So we'll go with that one. Somehow I was smart enough when I took this apart to just leave these bolts right here. It's also smart enough to take a picture so I can see which of these holes that governor rod goes in. Looks like it's that one. This is one of those things where it's kind of a nice design because there's not enough room to get a wrench in there, but there's so little room that you don't need one. I'm going to try to pull this fuel line out of here. Not because I'm going to replace it. I mean, I should replace it. You know, I take that back. I am going to replace this. Reason being, the fuel outlet on this one is on the opposite side of that one. I was thinking that was going to put it closer to that, but it puts it farther away, so I'll have to run it around. Other than that, that thing fits on pretty well. It's kind of a weird crapshoot ordering parts for these things, because there's so many minor variations that it's hard to tell if you're getting the right thing or not. Then you're stuck wondering if you got the wrong thing or if it's just poorly made. I mean, it will work. I'm just going to use the socket on the drill here, spin this over, and we got some sparks. They're not great, but the spark plug's a little oily too. I also want to check the oil on this. Well, there's oil in it. There's oil in the dipstick. It looks pretty good. Might be a little over full, which concerns me a little bit. Because this thing was sitting out in the woods, uncovered in the weather, there's some chance that it's got water in the oil. And I'd rather not have water in the oil, so I just want to check. That's not oil coming out. We'll go ahead and do a proper oil change on that. If that had run recently, that would have kind of come out looking like some sort of deeply unappetizing chocolate milk, but since it's been sitting, it's pretty well separated. Oh, that's disgusting. We'll let that drain out overnight, and we'll get some fresh oil in here. And get some fresh fuel line on it. There's a little guard here that keeps the fuel line out of the flywheel. It's a real pain to get it back behind here. Let's throw some fuel in that and see if it leaks. Turn that on. Well, I don't see anything coming out of the carburetor. This hole seems like it's been cross-threaded. Is that even the right size? The wire that grounds the ignition coil broke off of here, which means this wouldn't turn off the motor anymore. It's like crimped on there. Looks like I've soldered this together once previously, so we'll just do that again. Well, I got that thing all buttoned up. Let's take it outside and see if it works. There's got to be an easier way to get up this hill. Got a new belt to put on here too. Of course, I took this all apart before the last snow, so now I need to find the bolts. The urethane roller on here definitely has a groove worn into it, but it seemed to be working okay, so we'll leave that for now. I remember this part being super sketchy the last time. That wasn't too bad. And now it's back down the hill again to throw the rope over the bull wheel. Really? It fell off of that pulley. Let's get it on the bull wheel first. And I think there's a ladder back here somewhere. Ah. Not sure I like that. Could one of you hold this for me? Why do I keep you guys around? Had to kind of tweak this around a little bit so that it's straight, but I think that looks pretty good, and back up the hill again. I did have to redesign my safety gate from the previous iteration because the rope was just tearing through it. So now it's just held in place with some bungee cords. Still does the same thing though. No, that's not right. How did I have this? Alright, let's see if this works. Cool. Now all I need is a skier. So we got like a good hour and a half of skiing in, and then the carb started dumping fuel out of it, which means I've got some sort of float issue. I'm gonna see if I can pull this apart while it's on here and sort it out. So I was pretty suspicious that the float was filling up with fuel. This is one of the brass ones that's just soldered together. And I was just gonna throw it in a little cup of gasoline and see if it floated or sank. But you can definitely hear fuel in there. The problem, of course, is all my fault, because when I was trying to get the little pin out that was corroded in there, I hit this with the torch and melted the solder, and now it doesn't float anymore. And of course, since it's full of gasoline, I can't really try to resolder it back together. There's also a spot on there where it's pretty badly corroded anyway, so it might have been on its way out. So, the solution is more cheap parts from Amazon. Got another rebuild kit with a float in it. I also just went ahead and got a spare carburetor, but I think I have to take the whole thing apart to get that on. And since you've seen me put the float in once before, we'll just cut to some more ski footage and say thanks for watching. Oh, and for the frequent viewers who are going to ask about the mono ski I made, I've still got that too.